Let's learn a little bit more about our speaker, Kelly Rossi. Kelly is a project manager for Microassist. She has over a decade of experience in project management, including 7 years with Microassist. Kelly organizes and manages details of several projects simultaneously and synchronizes all project elements. She acts as a liaison between Microassist's creative and technical teams and client stakeholders. With her exceptional communication and problem-solving skills, Kelly serves as the primary contact for all projects for Microassist. So without further ado, I present to you Kelly Rossi.
Thanks, Brandy. Well, hello, everyone. As Brandy stated, my name is Kelly Rossi, and I'm one of the project managers here at Microassist. I'm going to tell you right up front before I get going that I'm not the most formal person that you're ever going to meet in your life. I'm not the most conventional person, and I'm not the most academic person. We're off to a bright start, right? Anything I know usually comes from experience, but that's a pretty good thing because I've had a lot of that. I've been managing our e-learning projects here at Microassist for around 7 years. Today I want to tell you about the life of a project, and more specifically, the very beginnings of that project's life. I want to tell you why it's important and how it can help you, even if you're not a project manager by trade. And all of this starts, of course, with telling you where it all came from. A couple years ago, I took a project management workshop, a few days, and when it was done, I went back to work, and I realized that it made me realize all the things I actually did in a day. I became hyper aware of all my things that I did. I even imagined that I had a new person at the office with me trying to learn how to do what I do. So I'd be working and typing an email, and I'd imagine this imaginary person sitting next to me, scribbling down notes as fast as they could. Because, of course, in my imagination, everything I had to say was extremely important and need to be written down, of course, right? It's my daydream, right? So it has to be good. You know, what would I teach the person about sign-offs? You know, how would I tell my imaginary person to track a budget? How could I tell that imaginary person to avoid a mistake that I made last week? And pretty soon I was thinking about my imaginary training of my imaginary person all the time. Brain would not stop. Brain would not shut off. And it felt like this. It didn't feel like that. It felt like this squibbly stuff. Because the thoughts kept coming out more and more and tumbling all over each other. It was a mess in there. It looked a lot like this. And it got to the point where I had to start writing everything down just so I could get a little peace and quiet between my ears. So that's what I did. Whenever I had a thought, I wrote it down on a sticky note, and I moved on. The only problem was, before I knew it, I had stickies all over the place. So instead of it being a mess in my head, it was a mess in my office. And I realized that I had a lot to say, and they needed to be organized. But I didn't have a structure in which to organize all these sticky notes. So I came up with a structure that made sense to me. And that was that projects have a life, right? And I know it sounds a little weird, and I should have said up front when I said I wasn't formal or academic, I should have said that my brain is a little... So I know it sounds weird, but it's actually not that weird when you think about it, because projects by definition have a beginning and an end. Projects come from nothing and they become a something, just like a person does or a tadpole does. So it made sense to me when I thought about that whole big arc of a project and all the things that it encompasses, to think of it as a life. So from there, I broke it down into 9 stages, 9 life stages. And I just kind of called it the way I saw it, you know. I gave each stage a name, and I defined the characteristics that made that stage. Just like an infant has certain characteristics that makes it an infant, et cetera, et cetera. I defined those stages in that way. And then I was able to start fitting all those stickies into where they belonged in each stage. And then from there, I actually added more detail. Shocked me to think I had holes in it, because I had so many notes, but I did have to round it out in some places. Before I knew it, I had created my own personal project management class. And I'm saying class, Randy can attest, with quotation fingers, because I never taught it. I'm not a teacher, just a person going to work and doing what I do, and I didn't mean to make a class. I just had to write everything down, right? That's all I really wanted to do. I never really intended to do anything. I very proudly organized it, and I sat it out on the hard drive where it sat until someone said, hey, will you do a webinar on project management? And I was like, yeah. I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about the 9 stages, and I'm going to have fans, and everyone's going to be happy. And I realized there's just a few problems with that. This is the first one. Okay? I don't think you can stay with me the whole time for 9 stages. I wrote them, and I would be bored to have it all in one, all in one go. And this is the second problem. I can't cover it all in the amount of time that I have because, a lot of the things I have to say are kind of detailed, right? So I'm not going to torment you with 9 stages. I'm only going to torment you with 3. The first 3 stages of a project life cycle, which begs the question, where does a project's life begin? If you were to ask me that, and I hope you do because it's my webinar, it'd be awkward if you asked someone else, and we compared a project to a human being, because that's relatable, I would argue that a project's life begins here, at his parents' first date. Our parents are looking pretty happy today. Why would I say that? Because most of the time, a project that comes your way had a life before you came along, just like your lovely parents here had a life before you came along. Whether you're a project manager by trade or you're just being asked to manage a project for your boss, that project had a life before you. People discussed it. They had meetings and they had cups of coffee and they made notes, and then somehow or another the project found its way to you and now you're being entrusted with it. I'm going to repeat that because we're going to come back to it. I think I'll repeat 2 things. This is the first. The project found its way to you, and now you are being entrusted with it. What life could your project have had? Defining a problem, brainstorming, choosing a solution. These are my first 3 stages of a project life stage. Simple, right? Like, maybe a little too simple? Like, why are we even talking about it? When I put these up on the screen, I heard a collective internet groan. Like, I'm not going to learn anything. What is this woman doing? But I'm going to stick to my guns, because that's what I do. And I'm also going to stick to my guns because it seems to me that these things are seldom done. And that first stage is a good example. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to assert that no one likes problems. And I'm going to assert that no one likes to look bad because of one. And because of that, we are sometimes just so keen on getting to a solution quickly that we don't take enough time to determine what's really wrong and what we're chasing in the first place. Problems are painful, so we want to shuttle them away as quick as we can. But when we do this, we can disservice ourselves and what we ultimately hope to do because we don't take enough time to figure out what's really going on. Another reason that we sometimes don't define a problem is we think we already have it defined. We're just sure we already know what it is. So we go straight into a solution only to find that the problem was something else entirely, and the solution that we implemented actually made the problem worse. How bad could it be? It's a crayon. But I had this, a good example of this is just a personal experience I had when my daughter, Madeline, started kindergarten. When you take your child to daycare, they don't care what time you get there. They just care that you pay them. When you take your child to kindergarten, they care a lot what time you get there. You got to get there at a specific time, and it will change your mornings. Your mornings become stressful, and you start doing the get your shoes on dance, right, with your kids. Like, get your shoes on, get your shoes on. We got to go. It becomes one word, get your shoes on. I don't have T-shirts made that say, get your shoes on. And that's what I was doing. I was doing the morning dance with my little kindergartner. Get your shoes on, get your shoes on. And she didn't get her shoes on. She actually walked away from the shoe bin in the opposite direction of the shoe bin, much to my dismay, and sat down at the kitchen table, started drawing a picture of a flower on a piece of paper. And she was really concentrating on it. She was working very hard on this flower. And I wanted to yell more about the shoes, but on that particular morning, I don't know why, it seemed important to her. And so I kind of came down her level and I said through gritted teeth, honey, why are you doing that? Why are you making a picture? I said to get your shoes on. We got to go. And she just looked at me really simply and she said, Mommy needs a picture. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. Why? Why? Get your shoes on, right? And she said, to cheer you up. And I realized in that moment that my daughter was, in her very sweet, lovely, amazing kindergarten way, solving the wrong problem. She perceived that there was a problem, and she dove in to save the day. In her child mind, Mommy being stressed and sad was the issue, and it needed to be fixed with a picture, because I always smile when she hands me the pictures, not getting the shoes on and getting out the door. Now, I know it's really easy to blow that story off and go, oh, that's a cute kid story, blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to stick to my guns again, And that if you look around your personal life or your professional life, you're going to find lots and lots of times when the wrong solution was implemented and it made the original problem worse. So defining a problem is really important, and defining it accurately is even more so. Moving on. Brainstorming. That's the second stage. Everyone knows what this is, right? You think of every possible solution to your problem that you've hopefully defined, and you write them all down. All of them. It's so simple, again, that no one wants to talk about it. It doesn't seem to merit any discussion. And it's so simple that, again, I hear the collective internet groan. But this step goes hand in hand with the first. Once I understand the problem I'm trying to solve, why don't I sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and list every possible solution? I realize this is weird, but you've already been warned about that. I imagine that brainstorming is rather like going to purchase a horse. Yeah, I said horse. So if you were sleeping, wake up, because I said that brainstorming is like purchasing a horse in my mind. I've never actually purchased a horse. So if you have, please don't send me emails like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's just it's just an exercise. So when I imagine going to buy a horse, I imagine driving up to the ranch, and I drive out there, and it's beautiful countryside, and I meet the rancher, and he's really nice, and we shake hands, and he leads me over to this, big field with a white picket fence, and it's huge, and it's gorgeous, and it's green, and I go, where are the horses from which I shall choose? And he says, here it is, and he points, and there's one horse, just one. Really nice horse, but it's just one horse running free, right? Well, that's what it's like when you only stick with one idea, right? Don't stick with one idea. You want to explore all your possible options. If your ideas are horses, you want to put lots of horses in the corral, right? You want to put in pretty ones and ugly ones and expensive ones and cheap ones. Put in the ones that your boss won't like. Put in your one that other department won't like. Put in the ones you think you could never in a million years pull off. I really want you to put those in. And why wouldn't you? Because it's risk-free, and it's also just plain free. It's just a piece of paper. It's not going to get you, right? And you can really get a lot out of that. Third stage, choosing a solution. You review all your possible choices, and you pick the best one. If you did the other two stages or two steps, you'll probably have a decent sense for the potential limitations of your solution and also what it might require of you. And that's just a much more practical way to swing into action. You'll know which solutions you did not choose also. I think that's the second thing I'm going to repeat. You'll also know which solutions you did not choose. And that can be very important later. And there, I just taught you the 3 stages. But the most interesting thing about them to me is that they all typically occur before the project manager comes onto the scene. So I refer to them collectively as life before life. It's the life the project had before you. Just like the life your parents had before you, this is the life that your project had before you. But why would you care, right? I mean, aside from the fact that it's like just a logical thing to do, to brainstorm and choose a solution and define your problem, why would a project manager care about the life before life of a project if it happened before them? It's ancient history, right? And why would someone who's not a project manager by trade care about that? And here we are. We're at the why should I care stage. All you grumpy cats out there, hopefully you can see the little grumpy cat. And I actually like the why should I care grumpy cat stage. It's good for me because I believe that life before life is really important. It's so important to me that I wrote a whole webinar about it. And it's so important to me that I'm going to spend the rest of this webinar making the case that knowing the life before life can make managing any project much, much easier. And I'm going to do it in just 3 talking points. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Okay? If I fail at getting you over to my way of thinking, you're going to at least be entertained. It's not going to be boring. We've had a horse, we've had a grumpy cat. It's going to be fine. But if I succeed, you'll be entertained, and I get you over to my way of thinking, and I think you might recall earlier I said I wanted fans. So that works for me. So without further ado, why life before life is important in 3 talking points. Number 1, scope creep. Scope creep is a project management term, but anyone who's ever shopped at Target knows what it is. I don't know if you've ever gone to Target for toothpaste or toilet paper, and you walked out with toothpaste, toilet paper, a new dog bed, some shoes, a box of Raisin Bran, and some really cool dishes. If you've ever done that, you know scope creep. It's whenever a project expands to cover more deliverables than was originally intended, and it happens during the execution of the project, right? It usually happens gradually. It's the weight gain of projects. You kind of try to button your pants, and they don't quite button because something has expanded, okay? And it wasn't the pants. And project managers don't like this. Well, we don't like weight gain either, but when I'm talking about scope creep, we don't like either one. We don't like scope creep because our job is to keep a project on time and on budget, and that's really hard to do if the project expands during execution. Your budget can get small, your project got big, right? So to a project manager, preventing scope creep is a good, healthy, natural goal. Well, how would Life Before Life help you with that? Let's look at it again, and let's think about it. When a project creeps, how easy would it be to bring it back to center by simply helping everyone remember the original purpose of the project? If you know the Life Before Life, what was the problem I wanted to solve? What solutions were available to me? Which one did I choose? And which ones did I not choose? You can. When a project goes off the rails and everyone's lost, you can say, hey, let me help you get what you said you wanted in the first place. I remember what that was. I remember what you told me. We can do a follow-up project for another department later, but for now, let's get you something complete to show. Do you see how I'm holding that scope in place? That I'm doing it in a really nice way that helps everyone? Do you see how I couldn't do that if I didn't know the Life Before Life of the project? I'm not trying to con anyone out of deliverables. I'm trying to get them their deliverables. And it's a very kind of collaborative way to do that. And it shows that stakeholder that you're thinking about it, you remember what they really wanted, and that you care about it too. So that's my first reason. My second reason is self-preservation. This is sort of hard to explain. So I'm going to say a few things that maybe don't quite seem related, and you're going to feel a little lost, and that's okay. Just stick with me, because before I leave my second point of self-preservation, I will tie it all together before we go. We'll all go together. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that project managers need confidence, because we do things that people don't like say no. And that is a great idea, but it's totally out of scope. And I disagree with you. Doing that all day, every day was your job. You'd need confidence just to function and get out of bed, and the more the better. I'm not saying that you need to steamroller people or be a jerk in order to project manage, because you really shouldn't do that. But I've had times when I was in a conference room with 11 other people who were nodding their head, yeah, let's do that, and I had to pipe up and say, no. I was number 12, no, right? And it's important that I do that. Even if I turn out to be wrong, even if I leave that meeting feeling just dumb, basically, feeling 4 inches high, I have to do it. And I have to do it that time and again and again and again and the next time and the next time for the one time that I catch something critical. And that's just the good, successful projects. What about the bad ones? Everyone's had a bad project. If you were a project manager, could a failed project eat away at your confidence? What if you worked really hard on a project, you brought your A game, and you brought really hard on that project, and your customer or your stakeholder was unhappy with the outcome and unhappy with you because you were supposed to be steering the ship? It doesn't matter if the programmer did it. It doesn't matter if QA didn't catch it. It's all on you. So imagine that you're in that headspace and you're feeling bad and you're feeling full of doubt, and later that same day at 3 o'clock you have a brand new project kicking off. Got confidence for 3 o'clock? You ready? You 100%? No, you're not, because you feel bad. And when you work in a role where confidence is a necessity, that's a bad place to be, my friends. Because, and listen to me good, when you lack the confidence to do the uncomfortable things that project managers are relied upon to do every day, you will start creating mistakes that are truly yours because you were passive. You lack confidence, and your effectiveness will start spiraling down, and you will go with it. And I'm going to say that I know that from experience. That's School of Hard Knocks information right there. Now imagine that during that project that failed, your burnt toast project, you knew ahead of time that what you were being asked likely to ever be a real solution for the problem at hand. You had a warning system of sorts. If you know the life before life on that project, that's exactly what you would have. You knew the problem, you knew the solution, and you knew they didn't quite match up. Will that make a difference in your confidence going into that new project today at 3 o'clock? Now I'm going to tell you that I'm not talking about accountability. If you have an unhappy client or an unhappy stakeholder or an unhappy boss, you have to do whatever you can to make that right. You can't just be like, well, it's not my fault because they don't match up. No, you got to do everything you can to make that right because that's the right thing to do. If you made mistakes, you got to do everything you can to fix that because that's the right thing to do. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just you and your confidence. That's all. If you knew that project was unlikely to be a success, could you now go out and bring your gifts in full force to that new project at 3 o'clock? That's what I'm talking about. So tie it all together. I promised I would tie it all together, and here's me keeping my promise. Knowing the life before life of a project gives you some context and perspective, and that helps you maintain your confidence, and that helps you maintain yourself, self-preservation, and I should have put this on the slide, I didn't. It helps those new stakeholders down the line because they have a project manager who isn't afraid to do all those uncomfortable things that businesses hire and trust project managers to do every single day. Self-preservation is my second reason for wanting to know the life before life of a project. That's 2 out of 3. No pressure, right? I said I would do it in 3 points. I only have one. I'm looking at Brandy, and she's like, what are you going to do? No. I said I was going to do it in 3 points, and this is my 3rd point. This is my last opportunity. So I'm going to have to swing for the fence, as it were, right? If I don't have you on my side already. I'm going to have to do something unorthodox. Sorry. My 3rd reason for believing that life before life is important, and the 3rd thing I'm going to try to convince you with is this. Compassion. What in the world does that have to do with project management or life before life or any of the other crazy things? Well, I'll tell you. When I'm sitting in front of a stakeholder and that person or customer is complaining to me about a project or complaining about me, I get very flustered, right? Remember that slide a few slides back with the baby's face where the baby looks kind of horrified? That's how I feel inside when that happens. I get very nervous and I get very flustered, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm nervous and I'm kind of getting chewed out, and things have gone wrong. And then I start getting defensive because it's natural when you feel scared to start getting defensive and, well, they didn't do this and they didn't do that, whatever. And then I start getting offensive. Maybe everyone doesn't do this, but when someone's kind of treating you not so great, you start thinking about the things of that person that you don't like, right? It doesn't endear you to them, right? And if I'm smart, though, I'm going to realize that that person is doing what they're doing because they are experiencing stress. They're afraid of failing through me. Remember the first thing I repeated. That project found its way to you, and now you are being entrusted with it. You being entrusted with it is the seed. That client being afraid of failing through you is the plant. It's the flower, right? So, they're experiencing stress. They're afraid of failing through me. They're afraid of what their boss is going to think of them through me. They're afraid of losing their client, if they have an end client, or their job. And that's very powerful. People are scared to lose their job. There's a quote they love, and I wish I'd said it, but I didn't. Everyone you meet is afraid of something, loves something, and has lost something. Why would your stakeholders or your customers be any different? Why would your boss be any different? That person is treating me the way they are because they want me to respond to their stress and ease it. Okay? Once I realize that, once I make that connection, I remember I really do want to help them. it shifts me into a mentality of service, right? Because my mental energy is not being taken up being defensive or being nervous or being offensive. It's pulled into actually finding a solution, right? So miraculously, I become more flexible, and solutions that were not previously there now spring to mind. I give that person better service, and in turn, I do something that is meaningful to me personally, because I personally believe compassion matters. Why would this have anything to do with project management? I'll ask it again. As I've gotten older, I realize that I am a very tiny person living in a very large and extremely loud world, right? I promise that I will live my entire life, cradle to grave, without curing cancer. I'm just sure that's going to happen. And I'm never going to be like a Mother Teresa type of person. And I'm not going to have streets named after me. I was telling Brandy yesterday, I'm not even going to be a Justin Bieber. Like, I'm not even going to be that, right? So what do I do then, right? What then? So I thought, well, what if I take all the day-to-day stuff, right? The emails, the phone calls, the errands, the dishes. It never ends. Everyone has that. Everyone has stuff, right? What if I take the stuff and I connect that stuff to something that holds a higher value to me? Because when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to be thinking about your email or that Tuesday at work. I'm going to be thinking about what was important to me. And for you, maybe it's achievement. Maybe it's competence. Maybe it's innovation. But for me, it's compassion. And compassion is the single most important reason that I want to know the life before life on a project. Because when I know this, I am empowered to offer compassion in the ways that are most meaningful to my recipient. Not to me, to my recipient, and that has meaning for me as a person. How would your experiences be different if everything you did, every email you wrote, every phone call, every meeting, every interaction, every decision was made in the spirit of compassion for its recipient? I realize this sounds kind of holier than thou, and I get that. That's fine. And I would also tell you, I'm not anywhere near this level. I'm nowhere near it. I have to try. It's an effort. I have to try. But this is what I want to try for, right? And I'm thinking that if you look, you're going to find your own way to tie what you do, all that stuff, right? To take that stuff and tie it into a personal value that merits your efforts every day, the thing that you want to try for. And I hope that happens. Very sincerely hope it happens. That's it. I've done my best. That was my 3. I've done my best to impress upon you that every project has a life, that the life is broken into discrete stages. The first 3 are really important, why they're important, and how you can keep yourself going as a project manager or just as a person for a long time to come. I thank everyone very sincerely for taking the time to listen to me today, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great job, Kelly. We really appreciate it. We do have a couple questions coming in, so if anyone else has questions, feel free to submit those into the questions pane. The first question we have is, what are some suggestions you have for helping people define the problem?
Define the problem? Well, yeah, I do have some ideas about that. It kind of depends on the problem a little bit, but I would say try to find facts as much as you can. Like, do research, ask around. Don't ask just one kind of person, ask all kinds of people. Try to make it as much about facts and as less about emotion as you possibly can. And I would say try to focus on just finding the root and not so much all the results of the problem and how you feel about the problem, but just try to find that broken piece in the machinery.
Excellent. All right, we've got another one coming in. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. This next one is, Excuse me, it's been said that project managers have all the responsibility but no authority. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I could do another webinar about that. Well, it's true. I think people think of authority as like someone who works for you. Like if you're a boss, you have authority over somebody in a very direct way. And project managers don't have that. Like I have a team of people I work with. They don't work for me. You know, we all work for the same person. So that's what people mean when they say you're kind of managing without authority to manage. I think that's something that's really helpful is you just try to get buy-in on the project as much as you can. So for example, I might go down to a production person and say, hey, if I have a project with something that needs to be programmed kind of like this and that, how long do you think that would take, and do you see anything going on with it, and what would you need? And then they kind of give you that information, and that's what you hopefully will use when you're planning out and scoping your project. So you know, you're not telling somebody, hey, you have a week and here's how you do your job. You're getting that information from them, and they're a little more likely to participate in a positive way instead of you standing over somebody telling them what they need to do. I mean, sometimes that happens because the project needs that, you know, but I try to make it not come from me, right? I try to make it like, hey, this is what the project needs. This isn't coming from me to you as a person.
Excellent, thank you for that. Another great question here. What sort of strategies do you have in mind for brainstorming, or what's a good way to approach brainstorming? I'm just a simple person. I like a pen and paper or a whiteboard. I know that's crazy because there's like no buttons or technology involved. But I think the thing that's important no matter how you do it is that you just don't limit yourself. I've seen some people in brainstorming be like, well, I don't want to write that down. Like, really? You don't want to write that down? It's a piece of paper. Like, just write everything down. If it's stupid, write it down. If it's embarrassing, write it down. Just don't edit, don't limit, just let it go crazy, because you don't have to do anything that's on the piece of paper. One more thing I'll say about brainstorming is that in my spare time, I'm a photographer, right? Again, it seems like it has nothing to do with anything, but it does, I promise. And I will have an idea for a photo, and I'll take it, and it stinks. Like, it's awful. Like, I'm like, I hate this photograph. And then I'll try it again. And then the second time I try it, I get a great idea. And then I do the third time, and it works beautifully, and it's everything I ever could have hoped for. So my point of that is that sometimes the best things that you do or create or think of are the grandchildren of, you know, a failed idea. And if you don't go through that first generation and that second generation, you will never get to the grandchild. You can't have a grandchild without the generations before. So brainstorming kind of works like that. You might put things in that, you know, in the corral, so to speak, that are just dumb and you think are stupid, but that might generate something just awesome. Try that. Awesome. We've got one more question before we close things up. So this is going back to when you were in the room with 11 people and you had to say no. What was your approach?
Would you repeat the last part of that question? You cut out a little bit. You said I was in the room with 11.
What was your approach to saying no? How did you go about that in a positive way?
Oh. Okay. How did I say no in a positive way? After I came to, I said that I tried to just make it about the project. Like, well, it sounds like that could be out of scope. Let's go check the contract and make sure. I knew it was out of scope, you know, but it's just a little softer. Just to plant the seed in them, I'm like, hey, let me get back with you, or I'm pretty sure that's out of scope, or that's what you, but when you chose the solution, you said you didn't want to involve that other department, and this would make it so you're involving that other department. Why are we wanting to change what we're doing here, right? So I just try to kind of point for them, and I try to plant the seed, and also I try to make it more about the project, because sometimes it can feel like a power struggle, or it can feel personal, and also just help them remember what they wanted in the first place, like I said, with scope creep. But didn't you want this? Wasn't this your goal? Doesn't that run counter to your goal? And then if that doesn't work, you know, there is such a thing as a change order in project management. So sometimes the needs fundamentally really truly do change. They're not just getting off track. And then you can explore that option and go, okay, well, this is what it's going to do to the budget. This is going to do this to your timeline, and let's get that formalized and get it signed off.
That's excellent. Well, thank you again, Kelly. Great presentation. We appreciate having you.